I remember learning about abortion being like probably 5 or 6 years old. My parents played a song and it was all about a woman who regretted her abortion. Being a little kid, all they really told me was a mommy hurt her baby. So anytime that song came on, I was like, I can't handle how that makes me feel, because it just feels so hopeless and it feels so sad. As I got older, I was like, okay, if there's any way that God could use me, then that would be really great. I was at a college, just a state college campus, and the Planned Parenthood booth used to just sit there all the time. And it would make me really upset because I still felt like I did as a little kid. Like, this is so horrendous. They're putting such a nice face on it. Like, oh, we're just here to help all of you young people who are away from your parents and in a new place to kill your babies. But actually, Jenna, you spoke at my church a couple years ago, and ever since then I was like, okay, they're actually doing something. They're saving lives. This is really great. We're seeing women changed, and if I can be a small part of that, that would be awesome.
I grew up in a Christian home. As a young adult, started to make really poor decisions and found myself in a situation where I was pregnant. The father of the baby was not interested in being a dad. I had several close family members in my life who were encouraging me to have an abortion. Growing up as a Christian, I had always thought abortion was wrong. I believed it was murder. I felt like all those women who come in here wrestling with, okay, I know this is wrong. I feel like this is my only option. I thought about adoption. I thought about what parenting would look like. I remember going in for an ultrasound with my mom, seeing my baby's heart beating and thinking, wow, like this baby's alive. I remember pleading with the father of the baby, even like, look, like this baby has a heartbeat already. How can we just end its life? I just remember that heartbeat. But ultimately, I ended up making a decision to have an abortion. I remember being on the table, and I remember a point when I tried to sit up, because I feel like that's a natural response when you have your baby too. Like, I wanted to see, even though they're removing the baby from me, and they pushed me back down. I can't forget those moments of them just sitting in the recovery room afterward with all these women just sitting there. My life spiraled out of control. For a couple of years after that, just made a series of poor choices, just because I was wrestling with the guilt of, I know God forgives, but I chose to have an abortion. I chose that. And so I just tried to numb myself with all the things. There came a point where I was just like, I have to come to terms with my choice. It took several years of meeting with God and being with Him and allowing Him to go deep into my heart to heal. And I think it's still always a process. I will never forget. I was 19 when that happened, and I'm 42. And that never goes away. And that's something that I can share with the women that come in too. Like, it feels like this is the easiest choice for you, but it's not. It's gonna stick with you. I work at Alliance because I want to spare women just the agony of what they're gonna come to if they choose abortion.
So much of what Casey does in appointments with people is just meeting with them and really talking with them in a way that they haven't talked to people maybe ever. Like, coming into the clinic is probably the first time they've even shared that they're pregnant or that they are thinking about an abortion. It's just such a vulnerable time. There was one person who came into the clinic and she was just so upset, and she started yelling about how she's definitely not pregnant. If she is, she's not keeping it. No. And I was just like, okay, just tried to help her kind of like calm down and breathe. Like, it's weird being here. But she ended up keeping her baby, which was so awesome, because as she went into her appointment, I was like, oh, this is one of those ones that's just going to be a sad story. But of course I'm going to pray. And it's just so cool that God, He changes hearts and minds. Even when they seem so set on what they're going to do, He can change people.
Earlier this year, I had a mom and her husband come in. They already had a couple of kids and they didn't want to have any more. I just remember her sitting on the exam table and just crying. Like, you could tell that she didn't actually want to have an abortion, but she felt like, this is my only option. I just remember being able to share with both of them my own story, but not only that, even being married and having 4 kids and getting pregnant with some of our kids that we weren't planning either. I'm like, I can't imagine my life without this child. I just shared the love of Christ with them, and I was able to, asking if I could pray for them, and they both were like, yes. We just all held hands and prayed together, and He was in tears. At the end of that appointment, they just said, I guess we have a lot to think about. They didn't say they were going to choose life at that appointment, but over the weekend, they texted our case manager and said that they had decided to keep their baby. And I actually was just texting her last week, and she recounted to me, like, I'm so glad you're still reaching out. I'm having a girl and she's due soon. And it's just a beautiful thing to then months later be able to revisit that choice that could have ended so differently. Those are the best moments when you get to actually hold the baby or see those pictures and know, like, this was a life that may have been snuffed out, but they're here because of the miraculous love of Christ.